My sense always has been that my decisions and my choices are first of all made on what I'm going to say when I stand before God, because I will, and so will everybody. Now that's my view. I think that's what the Bible says. Not everybody agrees with that, but I think anybody who reads the Bible believes that way. Our founders sure did, because they talked about standing for the judge of the universe to hear their actions, the rightness of their actions when establishing this country. They knew this, and I believe that as well. And so that to me drives more, that's more important to me, that my decisions are made morally correct and based on truth than the fact that they may be politically correct. I'm not concerned about the political correctness. I am concerned about the moral rightness, though. And so that started way back then, and I can recall that, and I've thought about that many times since. But when I actually got into the House then, I had carried with me in my wallet from the time I was a teenager 5 little principles for how to make life choices that I had gotten into youth camp, and a guy had met with all of the young men at the camp, and as young kids, you're making big choices in life, and sometimes you can make wrong choices, and wrong choices have very bad consequences, and so this individual shared with us 5 simple principles for life choices. And I put that in my wallet, and I carried that with me the balance of high school, through college, through my first 15 years in private business, and I took that with me to the floor of the House. And I would often pull that thing out. I mean, it was ragged, pretty ragged when I pulled it out, and sweat had gone through and had run the ink on it, pretty chewed up. But I pulled it out when I was confronted with some of those first tough votes, and I thought, you know what, this was appropriate for life choices, but it needs to be rewritten and applied differently for the complexity of these broad votes that we're going to have to be taking on all kinds of issues. And so began to work and ultimately came up with what I called a voting checklist. And then a group of guys that I ended up gathering around that stood with me ended up casting our votes the same way, so that we could cast principal votes, operate as a block of good members, and in a way that we could look 20 years down the road and look back and say that we made the right votes, because votes made on principle never change. And you don't have to worry about waking up some 5 years down the road and saying, I wonder if I made the wrong choice. If you made them according to principle, you will have always made the right choice. So the questions were of this fashion. The first question I would ask was, is it moral? And if it failed in this fashion, then didn't get a yes vote. But I started with, is it moral? Because my belief is, as their founders did, that rights come from God, not from government. Therefore, the moral aspect of higher law is where we start. So, is it moral? Well, that would be the kind of reason why I never voted for any kind of thing related to abortion funding, killing of the unborn, as an example, because that is flat out immoral on its face. Voted against at times and worked against issues that were involved with eminent domain, taking of someone's property improperly by government. That's theft. Yes. So it applies in a number of different ways. Second question is it constitutional? Now that's when we all take, anybody in office takes an oath to support and defend the Constitution, but unfortunately, you look to Washington in particular, you wonder if anybody actually votes that way anymore, because so many things have been done unconstitutionally. So whether it's a bill that would impinge upon our right to worship, First Amendment, right to free speech, Second Amendment, right to keep and bear arms, Second Amendment, to protect our families and our property. How many attempts are there to weaken the Second Amendment? Well, I would always oppose any of those efforts. The Fourth Amendment, private property, and to be free from search and seizure and that kind of thing, important. 10th Amendment, all the way down to the state's sovereignty. The constitutional aspect prevented me from casting any vote that weakened any of our constitutional freedoms. Now, taking that to Washington, there are many applications in Washington. Had I been in Washington, that amendment alone would have prevented me from, and I would have cast a vote against, for instance, what we now call as Obamacare, as an example, which is completely unconstitutional for a lot of reasons. And National Defense Authorization Act recently that involves detention ability by the federal. Many different things would have voted no because it's unconstitutional. Third question was, does it preserve and strengthen individual freedom, or does it essentially strengthen government control? Now, my view is that if in office, my job is to protect and to defend, which my oath says, the freedoms of the people, constitutional rights. So if I'm in there voting on bills and legislation that just consolidate, strengthen government control at the expense of the people, I'm violating my oath again, and so I would vote no, and many times I did on that point alone.